My guest this week is CLARE O'KANE. CLARE is a comedian, writer, and actor from San Jose, California, who's opened for the band Jawbreaker and Mark Maron, written for SpongeBob SquarePants, Shrill, Saturday Night Live, kinda hosted the show Flophouse in Viceland, has appeared on ComedyCentral.com, and was one of Vulture's comedians you should know in 2022. She thought her first comedy album, Let It Be, released in 2018, turned out pretty good, and her newest album, Everything I Know How to Do, has just been released through Eugene Mirman's comedy label, Pretty Good Friends. And it gives me great pleasure to welcome the Revolutions per movie, CLARE O'KANE. Hi, Claire.
Hi, happy to be here.
Thanks so much. I appreciate you picking Monterey Pop. Just such a wonderful staple in my video store. Played it all the time. Do you identify with hippie culture at all?
Growing up, I think I was a little more okay with hippie culture, and a little more tolerant, because my parents, their music, like their records, were Mamas and the Papas and
Sure.
Love and Spoonful and Simon and Garfunkel, stuff like that. So that's what I would listen to of their music, and I really liked it. And then I got older, and then I kind of sort of went a hard punk pivot and went, hippies are lame. Also, I'm from the Bay Area,
Wow, right.
so the hippie movement and those roots are there for sure. And so the remnants of those particular hippies are pretty sad. In Berkeley and Oakland and San Francisco, you see the burnt outness of it all. And I used to work in a video store in San Francisco
Oh, which one?
called Film Yard Video. It doesn't exist anymore, but it was in North Beach, the Beatnik Center of San Francisco.
Okay.
But every so often, one of these like old sort of burnt out hippies who would rent the same video every week would come by. And so I have respect for the movement, but generally hippies bug me.
Yeah, it's so funny. I love the music,
Yeah.
the culture. I'm just kind of like, I would, like, if I was at this concert, I'd be so uptight.
Yeah,
I'd
me
just be
too.
like, hey, you're kind of leaning into me a little too much. Like, I'm trying to watch
Yeah,
this
like this
thing.
guy's
like-
vibrating a little too hard next to me.
Yes.
I think I just don't, I'm a little too cynical, I think, to be a hippie. I'm too afraid of drugs. So that's another thing. Maybe I just have to open my third eye, but I'm really sort of judgmental in not a good way.
Well, it's funny, like, in the 80s, all my, like, Black Flag, Dead Kennedy friends, they all left to love the Grateful Dead because they're like, I have access to sex, drugs, and rock and roll.
Right.
And they're like, I'm 16, I'm out of here.
Yeah.
And it was like, I just remember just standing there being like, really? Like you can stand in the sun and listen to that and like become a wreck?
Yeah. It's something about feeling like you're a part of something bigger than yourself, right?
Yeah.
And I think the hippie movement and the Grateful Dead and all those bands really provide you with that, because that's what they're preaching, I guess.
Do you go to many festivals? Are you a fan of like outdoor shows or anything like that?
I used to, when I was younger, I went to festivals. I went to Coachella when I was like 16.
Oh, wow.
I went to Bonnaroo, which sucked. I've gone to Outside Lands in San Francisco many times. That's in Golden Gate Park. I've always wanted to go to like a jazz fest. Now I'm the age of like, take me to a jazz fest.
Yeah, we're that jazz age.
Take me to a place where I could sit down. Yeah. Which is so funny to me about this movie. I don't want to jump in too fast, but I just want to say the fact that they have chairs set up.
I know.
So crazy to me.
Yeah, there's that amazing scene where they talk to the person setting up the chairs, and she's just like rubbing the rain off all these chairs, and she's all alone. I'm like,
yeah,
are you the only one they sent out? Like, hey, you hippie, get over here, wipe these chairs down. Oh, okay. Everyone else is like having a great time.
Yeah, seemingly.
I wanted to ask you about the concept and my love for growing up with comedy albums, because I love that you have released comedy records. They're so
Mhm,
spatially unique, right? In terms of,
mhm,
as a child, I'm listening to Steve Martin, I'm assuming walk on stage and move around, but like I'm imagining where his body's going. And there's always, even on your comedy record, there's like a supporting cast or like some backup singers in the audience of yours where you're like, oh, that person laughing hard, I'm friends with them now. I
mhm,
know them. And I'm trying to picture what they
mhm.
look like. Is it kind of strange to put that together? Or is that something like that you always were endeared to? Or what was your history with comedy records?
Comedy records specifically, I never really listened to when I was younger. I was because I had, had Comedy Central back when Comedy Central would play, like, constantly play stand up. So I was kind of just rewatching stand up. But as for records, like, it, I'm embarrassed to say that one of the ones that I listened to the most when I was in, like, middle school was Dane Cook,
Uh-huh.
but that was like the highest selling comedy CD or whatever.
He was a rock star.
Yeah, totally. But I would listen to those jokes over and over again, the same way I would songs, and then you sort of like memorize the jokes.
Right.
But it is a putting one together is a little funky in that, because I was there, I was on stage, I knew what it felt like, I knew what it sounded like,
Right.
and then translated onto a record. I'm like, I know more people were laughing there, but it doesn't sound like it. Like, you do have to engineer it in a way where it's hard to really be there for real when you're
Right.
listening to it. There's always gonna be that dissonance.
But it's so unique because, when I listen to bands recording music, I rarely get the sense of the shape of a space. But comedy
Right.
records are so weird. You hear, because they have a mic set up and you're catching the distance of people in the audience in different places laughing. It's really odd.
Yeah.
But I kind of love it because it alters my brain in a way that, like, I'm like, oh, comedy albums sonically are completely different than like even an acoustic like performance being captured with an audience. It's just a different energy.
Yeah, and the way you listen to it is different too. You have to sort of pay attention.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have a naive question. Do you write like set lists, like when you're making this up where you're like, all right, this is going, OCD is going in,
Mhm.
this is going out, I want a fucking oranges in,
Mhm,
like
mhm.
how do you navigate that, like in terms of making something that's like going to be concise and kind of for the ages?
You you practice it. Ideally, you have time to do the same set, the full set in a different space before you actually record it.
Okay.
Um, Hopefully a couple of times. And and you like there's a flow in the same way of like a music album, you want it to start off strong, but you want to keep people listening.
Yeah.
So that's the same way with the content of a comedy album where you're like, it does have to sort of flow and you're sort of talking about yourself. So there is some sort of inherent narrative. So, like, yeah, just figuring out what always works, like the jokes that always work, you're going to keep those in and make those work within that context. The jokes that you really like but maybe don't really do very well, you kind of have to, like, you have to take it or leave it. And then there are the little things, just the little things that you're like, I don't need it. But with this album, it's pretty short for an album. I don't even think it's an hour. I kind of just I like leaving in all the little things that aren't necessary because it makes me feel like that was, one particular set that was different from all the other sets.
No, it's great. Your sides are awesome. Like
Thanks.
just the way you're like, oh really? Okay. Didn't expect that. And I also felt a real kinship with you on the part about OCD and your
Mhm.
pre-flight ritual,
Mhm.
because I too have kind of a weird pre-flight thing and I felt a total kinship. I was like, oh, thank God I'm not the only one who's running something in my head, you know. But I love that. I just thought that was amazing. Like I don't want to give any spoilers away,
Oh,
but
sure.
but I love that what you came up with that gives you comfort. I was
Yeah.
like, okay, yeah, perfect. I get it. I'm totally there.
Can you share your ritual?
Yeah, mine's a little weirder, maybe darker. Like it's, you know, well, you share yours first and then I'll share mine.
Oh, sure. Well, mine, as you'll hear on the album, is just I have to say in my head, you go Big Mama. Like the plane is Big Mama, and I have to go, you go Big Mama. Get up
Yeah.
there, Big Mama.
Mine is so weird. I just close my eyes and it's only when we're starting to take off and leave the ground I'm like I picture the plane exploding in my head.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'm like, didn't happen, we made it. Cuz I'm like I'm either not going to know it happened,
Mm,
like I'm not going to be aware if this thing goes down or whatever.
mm-hmm.
Cuz I was once on a plane that was going down. Uh and all the things came down, people were crying and
Oh
you're
my
it's so
God.
you're just like I was like, no, not yet. This can't be it. This can't be the end of this story.
Yeah, yeah.
And we made it, and it was really emotional. Like I was kind of in shock till I got off the plane, and then kind of started crying.
Where
But
was that?
that was leaving the UK to go to Amsterdam, so it was a short flight,
Oh, wow.
and basically they just had to drop to keep the air pressure from the plane. It was just like all of a sudden you're like the air feels weird in here, and then all of a sudden the plane's like, you know, things come down, put on your mask, and you're just and that'll be on my never existing comedy record at some point. But now I just like, but that was something I did even back then. I just was like, yeah, just get over the fear of something bad happening. It's not going to happen.
Yeah, I do that too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Classic.
Kind of classic. Yeah, because
Yeah.
you have to just be like, you inevitably the thought of the worst possible thing happening is pops up.
Yeah.
And then it's like, what do you choose to do with that thought? You either like dwell on it and decide that it's going to happen, or you say, well, if it is going to happen, I have no control over it, and then I'm dead, and then I don't feel anything, and I don't have to live in this shitty world anymore, or
Yeah.
whatever.
Absolutely. Well, and it's, I mean, constantly we're dealing with like going from A to infinity in terms of multiple storylines now. Like,
Yeah.
oh, I can only imagine it being here and here, and then just trying to find peace in it. You know, what's so interesting about the film Monterey Pop, you know, filmed in June 67, a total era of, you know, unrest and political uncertainty, but it's such a beautiful, hopeful film. When did you get to see this film? How did you discover it?
I probably saw it at the video store that I worked at because
Hmm.
they had the Criterion um version, which I think came out in like 2002 or something like
Yeah,
that.
it's great.
It's great. And I watch, I'd watch all the outtakes and
I know the association.
I didn't I didn't see the association one, but I was looking because on the Criterion channel they have some of the outtakes
Yeah,
and I
it's
watched some of them and I'm like, oh yeah, I could see why they didn't put this Grateful Dead song in here. Like,
oh yeah, and the Grateful Dead basically after we were filmed said, this is too commercial. We're out of here.
yeah.
But I'm like, but you played the damn thing. You know, I know what this is about.
Yeah,
You know,
totally. And I forget how early in that their time of being a band that was too, I guess, or like
right?
he didn't even have a beard yet or whatever. That kind of thing.
There's a lack of beards in this film at this point in
Yeah, yeah.
rock music.
Yeah, and you can really hear when the beards come into play
Yes.
in all these bands. But yeah, I watched that. I would watch that a lot. I would watch that. I would watch Rock and Roll Circus.
Oh, sure.
Um and then I would watch there was like a Who uh DVD. I think it was just like a bunch of Who songs.
Mm.
A lot of the other D.A. Pennebaker, the David Bowie
Oh, Ziggy
Ziggy
Stardust.
Stardust.
Incredible.
I'd watch that over and over again. But yeah, Monterey Pop was great because, especially being in the Bay Area, you're just like, wow, this is what it used to be like. These are all these people. I wonder where they are now. Like all those shots of just people's faces where you're just like, what? Or like, I wonder if that couple who was freaking out together stayed together, or these great faces.
Yeah, and a lot of like flowers and hair and a lot of face painting and everyone looks kind of beautiful.
Yeah.
It's weird. I'm like you go to like Gimme Shelter 2 years later and it's like it's a different looking audience. Like
Oh yeah.
it's people are the world has kind of hammered them down in a way.
Yeah,
And
big time.
and in this it's still kind of like, oh my god, the world, anything's possible like through
Mm-hmm.
music. It's
Mm-hmm.
amazing.
Yeah, everyone, you're realizing like it's funny to see like wow, Jimi Hendrix, and then Jimi Hendrix gets built up so much after he dies, and now he's just one of these legends, and then he's almost like his image becomes almost who cares, because we see it all over the place. We see it in murals and things, and but then you're watching this and you're watching people experience this for like the first time,
Yes.
and a lot of people like after, I think it was after he lights his guitar on fire and destroys it, and then there's just one shot of this white woman just like not not computing what she just saw.
Exactly. Not sure if she's on the side of this. Like
Yeah.
has not decided yet.
Yes. It's really cool to see that and realize like, oh yeah, these were just moments in people's lives that they didn't realize were going to be historic, and they didn't realize we'd be comparing everything to these people.
Yeah. And I love D.A. Pennebaker constantly is like, I was not aware of any of these bands really. He did that with the Depeche Mode film he made.
Oh yeah.
I love that he's just always like, yeah, I kind of got hired to do this thing and wasn't a fan. But then while it was unfolding, I was like, oh my God, this is incredible. I love that he's just kind of was not necessarily like the biggest music nerd,
Right.
but he definitely had a sense of like that footage of Otis Redding, for instance, just kind of the silhouette around him and just
Mm.
staying on him for so long and just letting the emotion play out was like so smart in terms of the editing of this film. It's not like there's some moments where like, oh, there's psychedelic music and we're getting a little rapid thing. But for the most part, the film kind of moves kind of at a groovy, slow pace.
Yeah, totally. And but the performances he chooses to keep in the movie really like I think they're great choices,
Yeah.
because it's nice because it runs the gamut of everything that was popular at that time.
I did want to ask you before we get into the specific performances in this film. Do you know where this fairground is since you grew up in this area? Have you been to like this arena outdoor fairground that they had this thing at?
I haven't, but I'm familiar with like the environment.
Okay.
I can feel how wet the grass is in the morning kind of
Okay.
thing. Like I can smell it. It's a very particular, Monterey is a very particular area too. It's like right by the ocean, but it's cold because it's Northern California, and it's yeah, it's quite beautiful, but it's definitely sweater weather
Okay.
24/7.
Yeah, I always wondered because it's so funny. I just was like, all right, Monterey Pop, duh. It's an actual, growing up, I was just like, oh, they just called it Monterey Pop because it sounded, like I didn't know that there was an actual place in California called Monterey. I
Yeah.
just was like, oh, cool. It's a psychedelic name. And then, growing up and being like, you moron, it actually exists. But I've never been there. So I just always wondered, because it's coastal, is it a little more affluent?
I think it's a mix because just, you go a little inland, not even inland, and then you have like Salinas and places where a lot of immigrants live and migrants live, people who work um the fields basically. That's where all your fruit and your spinach and your garlic comes
Okay.
from. All that's a lot of it. And then I think it's also close to like Carmel by the sea, where it is a little more affluent. It's like kind of feels like the Florida of the West Coast, where it's like older rich white people living by the sea. But Monterey's it's all different kinds of people.
Well, yeah, it's amazing. I mean, they estimated, and I love estimations, between 25,000 and 90,000 people showed up. That's a big estimate, like.
Yeah, was it free?
It was not. It was a benefit, and all the bands donated the money, except Ravi Shankar was the only one who got paid.
Really?
Ravi Shankar got paid. He's the only one.
Was that in his contract?
It's so weird. You're like,
I wonder.
You would be like, oh, if anyone, Ravi Shankar would be like, oh, sure. Yeah, but he was probably like, no, I'm not going on till I see the briefcase of money, and then I'm good to go.
Yeah, I wonder.
Yeah.
That's curious.
But yeah, it's a nice short film, too. It was originally going to be for ABC TV. And once Lou Adler, who helped put this together, who worked with the Mamas and Papas, he basically tried to get ABC to show it. And once they saw the Jimi Hendrix stuff, they're like, we're done. Keep your money. Get out.
He's humping his guitar.
Yeah. But right out of the gate, the title sequence is super exciting, like with just the hand-painted letters and Big Brother and Holding Company doing combination of the two. It's like pure 1967 psychedelic rock.
Yeah, it's the best.
Yeah. And they move through things really quickly, although they do have moments where they talk to people in the audience, which is some of my favorite stuff. They ask the young woman out of the gate, have you ever been to 11? No.
Mm-hmm.
God, I think it's going to be like Easter and Christmas and New Year's and your birthday all together, And it's just so innocent and beautiful. They're just like probably like 17, 16 at this rock thing with all these people, and it's going to be 11. Have you performed at a rock thing like this? Like have to go out and like play to people who are like ready for a different energy maybe than what you're going to do?
Yeah. I did a few shows with the band Jawbreaker.
Oh, amazing. Yeah.
Yeah. Because the drummer, Adam, he owned a video store.
Yep, totally.
In San Francisco. And in the basement of that video store, there was like a little venue, and he let us put on stand-up shows there in San Francisco.
Oh,
so
amazing.
That's how we got to know him, and he had some stand-ups open for Jawbreaker on their first reunion tour. And it was, it's difficult opening for a band.
I can imagine.
I can't imagine, but back in the 60s and 70s, and maybe even 80s, that happened often. Like comedians would open for Dionne Warwick or whoever, or Casey and the Sunshine Band, like random people, and I don't think it has ever worked historically. I think the vibe is just too different, and people are there specifically for the music.
Right.
They don't want to hear you talk about anything.
Yeah.
They just want to hear the thing that really moves them.
Right.
Which is the music.
Well, maybe if it was turned the other way around, I get it too. Like if I went to see, I'm going to a comedy show, I don't know necessarily I'm ready for like 2 opening bands before the person comes on. It also might be kind of like I get it, it just maybe doesn't go that way, but it is surprising. It just seems like it would go hand in hand, but I get it.
Yeah, I think it depends. Sometimes it can work. I think if the comic is like known, then it works. I think if it's someone who people don't know, it's harder. The only time I've seen it really work is like at these Yo La Tengo Hanukkah shows they do here in New York.
Yeah.
Where every night of Hanukkah they'll have an opening band and a comedian, and everybody expects there to be a comedian.
Yeah, it's brilliant.
Yeah, it's like if you're expecting it, and if that's like a part of the package, and Yo La Tengo have good senses of humor, like it's kind of like the band kind of has to be funny too in order for them to have a comedian open for them,
Yeah, it's so funny how in the 80s, like with college rock or independent music, how humor started creeping in really wild ways. And so many of the bands were from San Francisco. I just
Mm-hmm.
remember if a San Francisco band was coming to town, you went to see them, and they were always going to be kind of weird, whether it was Camper Van Beethoven or 3 Day Stubble. It was kind of fun to see something that was like a little bit tongue in cheek and
Mm-hmm.
quirky, because up to that point, a lot of it, even the Dead Kennedys, had a sense of humor in their stuff, but so much of other stuff swirling around them from other scenes were deadly serious.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was always refreshing and I'm just like, I never figured out like why San Francisco, why was that baked into that culture where they kind of were like, yeah, we're kind of just a little weirder.
It's just a weird place. I don't know. It's hard to, it's got its own flavor.
Right.
But also the Bay Area is a mix of like really suburby suburbs. And if you're a freak in your suburban town, you're going to San Francisco. So it's just like all where all the freaks congregate and feed off each other, and that's where the crazy stuff happens.
So are you a fan of the Mamas and Papas from your parents' record collection and stuff like that?
Yeah, very much so.
Yeah, the footage in this is amazing. They actually ended the concert. Like they played after Jimi Hendrix, but in this film, they kind of put things out of order. Like it's such a smart choice to put them at the top because you just feel like you're in such amazing hands.
Yeah, totally. And yeah, they're great performers. That I mean, California Dreamin', as overplayed as it is like one of the best songs ever. And just seeing them sing it. What's that guy's name? Not John, the other guy, the Canadian guy.
Yeah. Oh my God. Well, the Canadian guy. Let's say.
Yeah,
I can't believe I'm forgetting his name.
yeah.
Not John Phillips. Danny.
I think it's Danny. But
That sounds. Okay, this is the last episode of my
yeah,
show.
exactly.
I don't know the
You should
name
know
of.
this. Um, I don't know, just his voice and seeing them vibe out, and it's such a powerful song, and of the moment. But yeah,
It sounds great too.
yeah, it
Like they've
sounds
got
so
a
good.
pretty awesome backing band, and there was obviously more of a studio band, I assumed, but it's really fun to see, because at this point they were breaking up.
Right, right.
So it's really interesting to see how different they choose to sing it than on the record. Like the two female voices are kind of doing a different type of pattern
Mm.
that at first you're like, whoa, this is kind of different. Like I'm not used, after hearing it a million times, it's just shocking kind of.
Yeah, totally.
Like they just are cool. You know what I mean? Like Mama
Yeah.
Cass fucking rules.
So cool.
All the appearances she did after the Mamas and Papas broke up, like performing with Sammy Davis Jr. on the Hollywood Palace and being on Johnny Carson hosting the Tonight Show
Mm.
as a guest host. It's like she would have, had a show of her own.
Yeah, she was great. I love her. I love her solo singing too. But there was that part in the very beginning, just like a brief moment of like, is it David Crosby?
Yes.
What got like
Yeah, he's excited.
excited that he is groovy, finally a good sound system. Like
Yeah.
I can only imagine like the shitty setups they have to do, because everything is all these outside festivals are like, that's the thing, is we're doing a festival outside, and how
Right.
poorly that can go. And so finally this sounds good, and yeah, that must have been great.
Yeah, he has a couple good moments. He has the one where he talks about the Kennedy assassination and like the truth behind it. Like before they go into a song, you're like, okay, all right, you go, David. Like he is fully formed David Crosby at that age already.
Yeah, big time.
So confident, so egotistical, very cool, but just like, yeah, I'm gonna tell people what's going down. I'm gonna kind of bum them out a little.
Yeah. Yep.
Are you a fan of boogieing and choogling, like Canned Heat that comes after them, like that kind of like
That like white boy blues, blues hammer kind of thing. I'm like, I mean, I love what I limited Can't Eat I've heard, I do like, but I always forget that that's what they look like, and it's kind of fun to watch.
The one guitar player, Henry, has like he has black rimmed glasses with like tape on one side, like Revenge of the Nerds.
Yeah.
It's like, again, no one's figured out how to be like a full on bearded, shirtless hippie yet.
Not
They're
quite.
still kind of like growing into it. It's
Yeah.
like 6 months away. And so I was shocked to see them too. I was like, and it was better to watch them than kind of to listen to them. Like they're like the bass player is like Mike Watt insanity, like really impressive. But nothing that made me ever go, I need to go deep. I'm all in on Canned Heat.
Yeah, no, I understand why they were included in that final cut, because there's an energy about it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And it's kind of the first time you see the audience members in Daylight kind of, rocking out in their own way, and just feeling it.
Totally.
And then you get Simon and Garfunkel.
And that red light.
I know.
So weird.
It's really weird. I mean, it's beautiful, but it's like all of a sudden they're in some sci-fi movie.
Yeah, I can imagine if you're having a bad trip, that's probably not the coolest thing to be looking at and listening to. But they sound so great.
Oh my God, it sounds amazing. And it does change the energy in the room from, that's what I like about the film, is like it slams into songs. Like there's no breathing room. It's like we cut directly into them doing this song together and in a very different mood. And I guess Paul Simon was really mad that this was a song that was included in the film.
Really?
Because he felt like it was kind of a throwaway song. He was just tired of it, right?
All right.
And he's like, all right, everybody, 59th Street Bridge song, feeling groovy, I'm done. And still, I can't, you're a video store person. When you see Art Garfunkel, I mean, all I can picture is him in like Carnal Knowledge and bad timing. Like I just picture him as an actor, like where he's going to go, that he doesn't know where he's going yet. Like is such a weird thing for just looking at him in 1967.
It's very weird. Yeah. It's just so like there's never been anything like them together. And it's just so singular. I don't know. Simon and Garfunkel. I really love them. I really do.
Yeah. Yeah, me too. And again, that was in my parents' record collection.
Yeah, big time.
Yeah, it's just beautiful on a child's mind, kind of. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
Like, it was like healthy. It was like eating vegetables.
Yeah, yeah.
But did you ever, like, as you got older, did your taste change in terms of like, Paul Simon was such a 80s and 90s, like, oh, he's even on MTV and he's become this different kind of guy. Like, he thinks he's funny in music videos and now he's doing Graceland. Like, did you ever have music that you loved as a child that you just had to basically kind of write off because time just your opinion or your look at it just changed?
Yeah, I think that, but the things that have endured, the music that's endured in my life is like this 60s folk. Like the stuff that I could take or leave is like the pop punk and shit like that I got into, or the brief moments of like Backstreet Boys, and that does nothing for me now. It really is this like these things that feel like standards that I go back to. Paul Simon specifically, I never really fucked with Graceland that much. I think I'm just more of a hardcore Simon and Garfunkel. There's enough in the oeuvre that I can go back to, that I don't have to branch out.
And he's just a force of songwriting at that age. It's kind of incredible.
Yeah.
The other thing he did was he was really essential to making the festival happen.
Oh.
The festival originally was going to be a one-day commercial festival, and he and like Johnny Rivers and Lou Adler and John Phillips bought the festival from the people who were originally going to put it on, changed the dynamic, and made it a charity event and a 3-day festival. So that's kind of cool. I was like, That's awesome. Paul Simon made this happen, and I didn't know that.
Yeah, that is cool.
I also love at this point where the hippie interview, it's the most modern interview in the film in terms of concept and identity, where they say, like, you kind of have to wait for a new wave to come, and then a whole new set of rock and roll bands comes along with it, which creates all this other bullshit.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, the first rock cynic is born. Like, they're over it. It's so killer.
Yeah, I'm sure they were over it in the same way that, Paul Simon's over saying the word groovy every night. Like,
yes,
groovy is dead almost at that point. It's a
yes.
whole new thing now. It's so interesting.
Did you ever get into the Jefferson Airplane?
No, and I think I actively despised them for a while.
Yeah, I had the same thing.
Yeah, only because, well, just like over hearing this that song, White Rabbit over and over again.
Absolutely.
Hating that song. And then I was in a production of like an Alice in Wonderland interpretation at my community college, where it's like Alice in Wonderland but set in Oakland in San Francisco.
And of course they had to play it.
They had to play it. It opened with like I played Alice, and it opened with me dancing to that song. The song that I truly hate. And yeah, there are a lot of Jefferson Airplane songs I don't like. I'll say the ones that are in this film I really like, and I like watching them perform it. And yeah, her voice is amazing. And
yeah, she, again, like, this film never made me want to go like actively seek out their records,
right? But
they're killer in it, and they're kind of. It's funny that they were going to be the San Francisco band before the Grateful Dead kind of eclipsed them for that mantle, but like they were kind of a big deal. A real quick aside, I too was in a play that used White Rabbit. In high school, I was in Go Ask Alice, which was a cautionary tale about drug use. And I played the younger brother who got beat up every night. And of course, you're just like in the dark, in the wings. It's like 7:30 on a Friday night, and you're waiting to go on stage, and it's like, boom, boom. You're like, oh, I need to get my shit together. I need to get away from theater.
Yeah, that I think something about that song just rings like false depth or something, where everyone really wants it to mean like, wow, sort of song. It's just like, this is just, I don't know. It's boring.
Well, and also the way it's overused, it's always used in such a like an Oliver Stone.
Right.
Like this equals like leaving your mind, and it's just you don't have any reality left. We're going to another world, and you're like, this is just it never did it for me.
Yeah.
But what's really weird in the film is that D.A. Pennebaker, I was reading this interview with him, and he, based on the footage of this film, Jean-Luc Godard saw the footage and was like, I want to make a film with the Jefferson Airplane. And you can find the footage online. He shot them on a rooftop, just like later the Beatles did. Same thing. They're playing above. No one can see them. The cops come and bust it up. It was a film that was going to be called 1 a.m., One American Movie, and D.A. Pennebaker was going to be involved. They started it. It didn't finish. But it's so weird that they kind of, like, I've never heard of this film. I'd never heard of this footage till I looked it up. And basically, they're the first band to play on a rooftop to no one that were kind of a big star. It was weird. I was like, how come I didn't know this? Like,
yeah, that's interesting.
It's funny to just think that somebody watching this film in 1967 were like Jean-Luc Godard was like, that band out of all of them, that's who I want to work with.
Yeah.
And it's just something I never really got.
Yeah. I mean, if anything, I'm like, why not Otis Redding? Why not Big Brother and Holding Company?
Totally.
Why not, like, yeah.
Big Brother and Holding Company, that was the first album I ever bought as a kid. When I was given money because the album cover was Robert Crumb.
Cheap Thrills, right?
Yes. And I remember getting it. It was like 5, 6. and just being like, I kind of like Ball and Chain, and the rest of it I was like, this is not for my 5-year-old, 6-year-old brain. It's like super bluesy, pretty dry, but oh my God, to be 24 years old and be Janis Joplin at this time, it just does my head in every
Yeah.
time.
And I love when you're watching Mama Cass watch her
Oh my God.
and she's just like blown away. It's so cool to watch.
Yeah. And again, this film is full of bands that were just unheard of. Like this, they played at a different point in time during the festival. They had to make them play again so that they could film this performance and
Oh,
get a
wow.
reaction because they missed it. They kind of like underplayed it. Like we didn't
Huh.
know what it was going to be. And then D.A. Pennebaker's like, oh my God, like we got to get this and in the daytime instead. And I love that also you see her like leaving her shoes like on stage, her like ankles are like popping out of her shoes. And the way she walks off, that thing, I don't know, maybe this is a weird question to ask. I felt it occasionally where you're like, oh yeah, we fucking killed it.
Yeah, totally.
And you just see that youthful like skip, like, all right, yes. I mean, it doesn't happen much.
Yeah.
But I just like, you've experienced that, right? Where you're just like, you walk off and you just feel different.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. Yeah, and everybody's thinking the same thing. It all feels really good. Yeah, what a feeling.
Yeah. So did you ever get into her music?
It wasn't, and I never really did get into her music. I truly like my favorite thing I've seen her do is that this footage of this song of her singing Ball and Chain. It's just so moving, and I think I sort of shied away from her for the same reasons I like with like Jimi Hendrix or the Grateful Dead, where I'm just like, oh, okay, I'm supposed to like think this is good or important, and for some reason I want to be contrarian and not care about this.
My favorite things often are music documentaries where, because I'm seeing them, I understand it a little more. Like sometimes the studio stuff, you're like, it just doesn't do it for me. But then you watch her perform and you're like, oh, I get it. But I'm not feeling this when I listen to this song on the record. It's just not, it's not the same.
Yeah. Yeah, and I feel the same way. So, I mean, Jimi Hendrix, I'll actually listen to a lot of those songs. But yeah, it doesn't compare to like seeing them perform.
Were you a Who fan at all?
I love the Who.
Yes.
One of the first cassette I ever got or like made my parents buy was the Who's Tommy, because we saw like a local production of it.
Oh,
when I was really little, and I really liked the music. And I didn't really know what they were singing about until I became an adult. I was like, oh Jesus. I loved Who's Tommy, and then I loved all those albums from the 60s.
Again, imagine not knowing who the Who are, and then just that energy and destruction and
yeah, they're a pretty weird band too. They're sort of
they are
not. I mean, obviously, all this music is unconventional at the time, but it's like this is just like strange. Pete Townsend is so strange in the way he thinks about music, and I don't know how they make songs, and just such a particular feeling.
Yeah, especially he wrote in such weird keys. I felt like that were like you're like the Who sound different. They just sound odd.
Well, the song that they didn't leave in the final cut was A Quick One While He's Away or whatever.
Their mini opera.
Yeah, and I was watching that outtake on the Criterion channel, and I'm like, yeah, I can see why they don't include this, because it's like so weird. It's just such a long, weird thing.
I know.
The timing of it is all weird.
Yeah. It's weird if you know the song. That let alone just being like in a seat watching some band from England be like, all right, here we're gonna do this one, and you're just like, you're either again, I feel like so many people in this film were probably all in or just be like,
Hmm.
I hated that. You
Yeah.
know, like, can we go
Yeah.
home now? I'm tired.
Yeah. Totally.
And just being an audience and seeing destruction on stage, I guess, was probably, I mean, it's still really viscerally so powerful to like watch it on
Mm.
film. Like, for some reason, it's perfect. Like, every destructive moment is like, you couldn't plan it better. Just visually,
Yeah.
sound wise, like how things cut out, like as it's being destroyed. The bass playing still going on. It's just beautiful. I'm just so glad they
Yeah.
caught it.
Yeah. Me too. It's so cool.
But the weird thing is that after that, they jump into something like Country Joe and the Fish, just going like, bloop, 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 bloop.
We'll talk about like hippie-fied music, or like starting to dress kind of groovy. There's that guy. I don't know anyone's name in Country Joe and the Fish, but the guy with the face paint and the funky
We
outfit.
should never know.
Yeah. But at first I'm watching this and I'm like, okay. But then it kind of gets, groovy, and then it kind of gets like weird and pulls you in. But I'm sure they included that just for the sake of using that visual of like, here's another weird looking guy.
Yeah, more face painting, like a flower
Yeah.
on the thing. Have you ever had your face painted?
Not since I was a child.
Okay.
Well, that's not true. I was a juggalo last year for Halloween, so I did paint my face.
Yes. Okay. Well, that would count. But yeah,
Yeah.
thank you for being honest. But
Uh-huh.
yeah, this is kind of where maybe, there's some footage in the film where they show people like looking at leaflets or posters or, like getting some propaganda material. This is kind of where I think I'd be like, I'm going to go check that out. I'm going to wander around a bit, like
Yeah.
Country
Yeah.
Joe are playing in the daylight, but it is
Yeah.
probably the most generically psychedelic thing in the film too. Like, if you want to say like, oh, like this is
Mhm.
what psychedelic music is, it's since the Grateful Dead aren't in it and other bands were not, because only a third of the bands filmed for this concert were included, and they were also one of the first psych bands in San Francisco, so they had to be included
Right.
because at this point they were like, oh, they're the grandfathers of the scene and they're 22, 23. So weird, but just it's a good chance also to see what the audience looks like.
Yeah.
Again, people don't look very damaged yet. They look pretty like they're
Mm-mm.
high.
They're high for sure. They're zoning out.
Yeah, but they're not lost yet.
No, not quite.
And it's weird. Like, I was in San Francisco recently, and I had some time to kill and went to Amoeba and Hate and stuff. And there's still hippie children
Totally
playing drums and asking for money and doing the thing. It's the same way that the first time I ever visited it.
Mm-hmm.
But that will never go away, right?
It can't. It's like this sort of like, I don't know. It's just a lifestyle at this point, being hippie. In the same way that like you'd be a Fish fan or whatever. Like there are all these things that are out there for you if you want to live the hippie lifestyle. You just have to really want to do that.
The experience of this show would have been so different, if you were just hazed out, like just stoned,
Yeah, I can't
seeing
imagine.
Country Joe and the Fish might have been like the best part of your day.
That's what I'm saying. Like that's music where you're like, oh, I have to be high to enjoy this. But that's on the rare occasion that I do smoke weed or get a little high or take a little mushrooms, I do try to do it when I'm going to a concert. Especially now where like I don't really like want to drink at a show, and I don't standing has become harder, standing for a longer time. So if I'm a little high, I'm a little more distracted and not thinking about how my back hurts or whatever.
Well, what was the best show that combination worked at its highest level? And I did say highest level. I just want to erase that now, but I can't.
Yeah, no, that was pretty good. Honestly, I think I got like a little high for LCD Sound System. I've seen them a couple of
That's
times.
perfect.
Yeah, yeah, it's pretty perfect. And honestly, like I rarely get high at a show, but I rarely get high in general because I hate to say it, the music gets me high. Like if I'm at a show, I get the same sort of feeling and rush of dopamine as I would being drunk or whatever.
Are you an easy crier when it comes to music? Like, I cry at concerts all the time. I get just overwhelmed
Yeah,
by it's so
big
weird.
time.
I feel it coming and I'm like, okay, here we go. Like, like,
Yeah.
and when I saw Teenage Fan Club last time, again, I just know it. Every time I see them and they play, certain songs, I'm just like, okay, here we go. You're gonna get through it this time. You're not gonna be a big baby. And it's like I can't help it. I just think it just means too much to me. It
Totally.
just destroys me.
Yeah. And imagine a comedian opening for Teenage Fan Club. It's like, these are the things that shouldn't happen.
Well, Jawbreaker too is like
Jawbreaker is so serious.
And they had an audience that turned their backs away from them at one point because they'd sold out, right? You're talking about an audience that like they really they lay some stuff on them that's not fair.
Yeah, they're emotionally tied up in it.
Yes. Yeah. So here comes Claire O'Kane out on stage. Let's do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There people are like, I want to cry right now. Like, I'm ready to cry. Get off the stage. I was just gonna say, I saw Magnetic Fields recently, and they were doing the 69 love songs, and like so many of those songs just really get to me. So I was crying for about half of that show.
It's always really kind of incredible if you realize somebody standing near you is also crying.
Yeah.
You're like, okay, we're humans. Awesome. I still believe it. Great.
Yeah.
And the part that just makes me cry in the film is the Otis Redding footage. They made an extended version of this film too.
Yeah, he's amazing. I wish I could, I wish he had lived long enough that I could have seen him. Because I'll listen to him a lot. Every so often, but I will, going back to OCD, I won't listen to him if I'm about to take a flight.
Yeah, there you go. Peace.
Yeah. I really won't.
No, definitely not. Well, I'll give you. I was telling you before we started that I had like just a conversation of an unreleased episode for various reasons.
Yeah.
I did record an episode with this author, Stephen Dusner, who wrote a 33 1/3 book about Chris Gaines. Do you remember Chris Gaines?
Chris Gaines, aka Garth Brooks.
Yes, and so he made a behind the music VH1 about Chris Gaines, and his band member dies in a plane crash. It's like every beat in the Chris Gaines story is like car crash, plane crash, sex addiction, label mates, being ripped off by your manager. It's like he took everything from every rock story and jammed it into this thing. And then the episode was going to come out Thursday. The allegations against Garth Brooks came out on Tuesday.
Oh.
And his book, I don't even know if it's come out. I don't know whether we basically were like, we cannot be like having a good old time here laughing about it. But it's the first time I've talked about it.
I didn't know what. I haven't heard these allegations.
Yeah, Garth Brooks. Yeah, sexual allegations. Yeah.
Yeah. You mean Chris Gaines?
Oh, sorry. Yes. Yeah, exactly. But yeah, I was like, I don't think this is. Yeah, I don't. Your book's coming out on Friday. This episode's coming out Thursday. This is going into the vault. So. But
do you ever play? Do you know about this game? This app, Music League?
Yes, I'm in one with Chalky the Funk Wizard.
Oh, cool! Oh, I got to get in on that.
I won it. I can't believe it. I just won the league.
Yeah, that feels really good when that happens.
I was shocked.
When everybody loves all your songs.
Were you getting stressed out doing it too? I'd be like, I got to get my thought in before anybody else takes this.
I'm in 3 leagues right now.
No, you're in 4 now.
Now I'm about to be in 4.
Yes.
And then I get stressed.
Me too.
I get stressed out about like picking the right songs. I truly had to like leave leave two leagues because I'm like, I mean, this is too much.
Yeah.
And then people like there's certain vibes of certain leagues. But all that to say, I have a league that I started, and my husband came up with this round idea, which was problematic favorites, or songs by people who have been effectively canceled or like are
Yes.
basically the Woody Allens of musicians,
Yeah, that's a good one.
or songs that have like questionable content.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's good. I've really enjoyed it, but once I started, sucked at the beginning, so it was easy. I was like, I'm not as good as these people. I'll never be up there. And then once I kind of got to one and stayed there for 3 weeks, I was like, oh shit, like, oh man,
Gotta keep this up.
Yeah. And I was really like, I never said anything about like what I thought about the song. I just was like, I'm just gonna put it out there. I don't want them to know who I am. And but congratulations, welcome to the League of Record Store Assholes. I think it's something like that. It's something record collector assholes. But yeah, and we talked about Jimi Hendrix a bit earlier. I just love in this film that the Who and Jimi Hendrix were fighting on who was going to follow who.
Oh, really?
Okay. It had a coin toss, basically.
Wow.
And they were totally It wasn't like friendly competition either. It was like they were mad at each other. They wanted to follow. They wanted to be the band to follow. And so having the Jimi Hendrix experience kind of like try to one up and, do their thing. It's so funny to think that, these were just kids still, right? They were kids who were like, all of a sudden superstars are on their way. And the ego and the competition was there at this really peaceful festival still. Yeah. But I love getting to see Jimi Hendrix just, even when he's not touching the guitar, it's making sound.
Cool sounds.
It's incredible. I get it. He's a legend.
It's so cool to see someone like use their guitar as like a third arm, or just another limb almost. It's like, oh, this person has been attached to this their whole life, and you can really tell they know every inch of it. It's so cool.
And it's so off the cuff, though. That's what's so cool.
Yeah.
It's not like I wrote this solo and it's going to be the same way every time. It's like, holy shit, how the fuck are you doing all of this? And in a funny way, the fire thing of him lighting his guitar is almost a little anticlimactic after all that stuff.
Yeah. This tiny little fire.
No, it's like, oh, wow. But it's like the real excitement is just him just having the guitar on him.
Yeah, what a great version of that song, too.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's where I heard it first before I heard the original one, I think. I might have heard this.
Yeah.
Have you had instances where you heard a cover version before hearing the original?
Yeah, a couple of times. I've just heard the original version of Going Up the Country.
Okay, who did the cover then?
I don't know the guy's name. I think I probably heard it on FMU, but it's just like an old blues guy.
Oh, got it. Of course, the original version that they covered. Right.
Yeah.
I thought maybe there was a new version for some like VW bug commercial that's like all like synth pop, version of.
Yeah. I'm trying to think if there are any others. I'm sure there are so many, but yeah.
It's a weird science. I heard Satisfaction by Devo before the Stones. So I was really used to, I thought they'd be similar, at least. And then when I heard the Stones one and there's no relationship, it really was confusing to me as a kid.
Yeah. How does that happen?
There's not even nothing in this song is like that. That's incredible.
Yeah. Totally.
And then, they wrap up the film with more Mamas and Papas before the climax of the film with Ravi Shankar. But again, Mamas and Papas went on after Hendrix.
Right. Crazy.
Yeah. So maybe it's like comedian, band, comedian, kind of. Like...
Yeah. Something. I wonder if they had that in mind. Like, they must have. or maybe they just wanted to go last.
I think they were the superstars. I mean, there was
Yeah.
a lot of people in the San Francisco press who were pissed that a lot of LA bands were on this bill and felt like it was kind of a sellout. And then they kind of warmed to it because it was a charity thing. And Mamas and Papas were, even though they were helping putting on the show, it was like a lot of fingers were pointed at them of being like, oh, they're like a pop band and, like a studio concoction. But there's something kind of lovely. It would be so amazing to see them close out something after a couple like anarchistic performances.
Yeah, I feel like that's a nice wind down for all these kids who are going to be sleeping in their sleeping bags on the grass.
Totally. With the mildew crawling into their throats and
yeah.
Oh my God. Yeah. What do you think the percentage of, it seemed like a low percentage of babies being made at this festival.
Yeah, there didn't seem like much opportunity for that to happen.
Yeah. It doesn't have like a
Like-
Woodstock or, kind of feel.
I don't know. I wouldn't be surprised if there were a couple consummations or whatever.
So what would be the perfect band for someone to have that happen?
Have the baby
Yeah.
too. On this festival?
Yes. Ravi Shankar, 20
That would be interesting.
20 minutes?
Probably Otis Redding.
Yeah, I think so too.
Yeah. Oh my God. And I love the way it ends with Ravi Shankar. I think that's really great.
It's amazing. It's like 20 minutes long, and you
Yeah.
get to see great footage of the audience like milling around the fair. You get to see like there's a guy in like army fatigues with his head shaved with like think peace written on his head.
Yeah.
And people like sitting cross-legged with pamphlets in their hands while Ravi Shankar's playing. And then when they decide to cut to him and his tabla player, it's like, holy shit.
Yeah.
This is incredible to watch.
Yeah. It's great to watch the people reacting to him, like really vibing out, really just people like smiling.
I know.
And but like the weird thing of he's playing sitar but he's playing in a way where there are like moments where you're like where like people laugh or like kind of like bursts into little applause because of the feeling that he is evoking in those moments, like I guess like sort of guitar solo style where people clap afterwards, but it's like it's just sitar going it's just sitar, and just the way he's playing it, and it seems like he's almost done and then he's not, and everyone's like, oh my God. People are freaking out and it's just getting in their brains.
Yeah, it's just tickling their head in a way that, again, they've never heard this, right?
Yeah.
And it's so fast, and the language between the two of them, especially at the end where they're like just back and forth, back and forth, back and forth.
Yeah.
And you do think it's going to end, and it keeps building, and then it goes down again. But what's so funny is it was originally 10 minutes longer.
Oh my God.
And Mama Cass saw an edit and said, it's too long. You got to cut 10 minutes out of this. And they did.
Yeah.
But because it is long, but it doesn't overstay its welcome.
Right. I don't think so either. And then there's the thunderous applause at the end where like it finally ends and people just jump up, and you see Mickey Dolenz in the crowd. He jumps up.
Yes.
It's like so cool.
That part makes me choke up too.
Yeah.
Because it's just pure innocence. They're overwhelmed collectively.
Yeah.
And they don't know what to do, right? Applause is like the proper thing to do, but like I think if it was up to them, it would just be like they'd ascend to heaven or something.
Yeah, like rip their clothes off. Yeah.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Same thing.
Yeah,
Same
totally,
thing.
totally.
So, this concert footage is done, the film's ending up, people are leaving. If you could book your own festival, and you could have anyone in the span of time play it, who would be some people you would want to be on a Claire O'Kane festival? And also, would you potentially maybe have a name for it?
Yeah. I would have if I could do whatever I wanted, it would be like Elliott Smith Nina Simone, James Brown, Curtis Mayfield, Black Sabbath. I'm just like naming all. Oh, Sly and the Family Stone.
Oh my God.
The Who. You know, if it could just be whatever, it would be like every band I've always wanted to see live. Yeah, I'll put Leo La Tango in there. And what would I call it? Claire Fest. I don't know.
That I will say, I've thought about this before, but that, like, right out of the gate, I was like, oh my God, the first three, I was like, sign me up. This is sealed. That's incredible. Yeah. Wow. Claire, thank you so much for coming on the show. I have one final question. I always ask the same question at the end of every episode, but I tailor it depending on the film we're talking about. So on a scale from 1 to 100, with 1 being the lowest and 100 being the highest, how many flowers in your hair do you give Monterey Pop?
If I'm going to San Francisco, I mean, so many flowers, at least 90 flowers.
That's what I have written here. 90.
Yeah, I don't even have that much hair. So it's like there's only so many places I could put the flowers. But I would say at least 90 flowers in my hair.
That's the correct answer. Also, I think that you have your next album cover in the bank.
Yeah.
I want to see 90 flowers in your hair on the next cover.
We can figure it out.
Thanks so much, Claire. I really appreciate it. It was great to see you.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you for listening to Revolutions Per Movie. We release new episodes every Thursday on your favorite podcast app and additional bonus episodes every Sunday on our Patreon. The show is a completely independent affair, so the best way to support the show is through our Patreon at patreon.com/revolutionspermovie, where you can get weekly bonus episodes and shows, exclusive limited edition flexi discs and records and CDs featuring guests that have appeared on the show, and other exclusive goods sent to you just for joining. You can follow us on social media at Revolutions Per Movie and also find out more information about our various guests in the episode show notes. Thanks again, and we'll see you next week. Bye.